There's an element of design that I think 5th edition could have potentially benefited from greatly had it been incorporated into the original game. At this stage, it would be far more work than it is worth to implement it. So I would not suggest trying to do so, but it's just something to think about when you see it happen in other games. It's a really neat piece of design. 4th edition, like, put its toe into this arena and didn't really commit to it, I think. Not enough to really be what I am talking about. I call it baseline and variation. So the idea is that characters will have some kind of baseline ability. You can think of it as like an attack or a spell or some special ability that they do. And this, by the way, really only works in level and class-based games. So you have your baseline ability that maybe you share with other classes, or maybe like your class has a lot of variations, subclass equivalents, or what have you. So you have your baseline thing. Let's use an example. Let's say we did this with Spirit Guardians. Say every class that can use Spirit Guardians gets Spirit Guardians at a certain level. So they cast Spirit Guardians, and what it does is it does damage to enemies that start their turn in the area or enter it on a turn. Just damages. They make a save. If they fail, they take some damage. And that's it. But every class that can use Spirit Guardians, when they get access to Spirit Guardians, gets an extra feature, and a rider or some additional effect that goes on to it. And so every class or subclass, or however you wanted to divide it, has a slightly different version of Spirit Guardians. This is a great way to add variation to a standard ability. So like one class gives it the current effect, which is enemies have their speed cut by half while they're in the area, which is really cool. Maybe some other class does, like, the damage doesn't stop if they leave the area. They have to, like, keep making saves until they succeed. Maybe another class, like, enemies in the area grant advantage to all attacks. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Maybe another one gives them disadvantage on their own attacks. There's lots of different effects that you can do, and in a game where you have like lots of different conditions and lots of different mechanics that you can like reach in and interact with and call on, like various D&Ds. D&D as in general has a lot of mechanics for an RPG. You can sort of draw these in and then apply them in fun and interesting ways. And this will create meaningful differences, because Spirit Guardians is one of those things that, like, any class that gets access to it probably should be casting it, because it's a really, really solid spell at all levels. It is one of the best cleric spells, and a couple other characters get it. I think paladins technically do. Is that it? Just clerics and paladins? Anyways. So like every different cleric subclass, every different paladin subclass, when they get access to Spirit Guardians, gets a special effect that is applied to that ability. Now, you could do that by loading the information on the class side. In some cases, you can do it by loading it on the game element side. The spell or the ability in question gets riders listed there. That's a little bit more limited, because then if you add more subclasses or more classes or whatever, you expand the other side of the equation, you have to then update the spell in some way. It's a little bit more awkward. I think it's easier. The thing that can potentially be expanded, that's where the rule needs to be listed. Because then when you create a new subclass, you can add your new interaction for this thing in there. Am I making sense? I feel like I'm talking in like real abstract terms here, because I'm trying to keep it general. 4th edition did this kind of a little bit. What they did was certain powers would be intended to be sort of more iconic for certain types of characters. So, for example, the Warlock has its different pacts. Your Infernal Pact, your Fey Pact, and your Star Pact are the 3 pacts that were baseline in the player's handbook, and then they expanded it from there. And so certain Warlock powers would have little extra entry, like if you're the Infernal Pact, you get this additional benefit. And so the power is actually better for those Warlocks than it is for other Warlocks. There are a couple of issues here, which is that doing it this way has a tendency to reduce build diversity. Because people, like, you know, if you're the Infernal Pact and you see, oh, well, there's a power, I get an extra effect, I should probably take that power. So most Infernal Pact Warlocks are going to pick that power if it's the only one that gives them a special benefit based on their pact. Unless they have a specific reason to go for a different power if they're going for a particular build. But like new players are going to really gravitate towards the additional benefit powers. The other issue is that, are you balancing the power based on the extra effect, or are you balancing it without the extra effect? Either one of those are problematic because either it is underpowered without the extra effect or it is overpowered with. And you can't really eliminate both of those issues at the same time. So I think it would be a better idea in general. And like, I get what they're going for. They want characters to be taking the powers that are iconic for their particular builds. You know, you want the Inspiring Warlord to be doing more heal-focused things. You want the Tactical Warlord to be doing more like issuing commands. And so the powers that fit into the paradigm of the classes or the subclasses that are using them, the character types, the builds, those powers are going to gear themselves in such a way that those builds are more likely to take those powers. And there are other ways to do it, obviously, but that is one of the ways that 4th edition chose to do it. I think it would be better instead if you have certain powers, maybe at maybe like 1 or 2 per tier, that have a list, or that have, like, you know, you get your special ability. This could be something that Warlock Pact boons. You know, Warlocks had Pact boons in 4th edition and 5th edition. Fun fact: before 4th edition, they didn't have pacts. That's that was a thing that 4th edition came up with. So like in 4th edition and 5th edition, Warlocks have a Pact boon, which is different based on your pact. And they kind of did this a little bit with their the Vestige Pact, because Vestige Pact powers would have different benefits based on which vestige you had a pact with. Or that, I think there were, I don't remember exactly how that mechanic worked. But anyways, let's say the power was like, you know, had 4 or 5 different special effects. You know, you have your baseline power, which is pretty plain, you know, maybe make an attack, do some damage. You know, super basic power. But if you're Infernal Pact, you do ongoing damage. If you're Fey Pact, they are blinded. If you are Stars Pact, they actually they become like dazed. You know, if you're Vestige Pact, they explode or whatever. You know, like you get different special effects based on what pact you have, which means that all your pacts kind of want to use this power. Which would suggest that it's either one of those things where, like, maybe you don't have a choice at that level. I don't really like the idea that you could level up and not have a choice to make. I don't like that kind of design, but 5th edition does it all the time, so I guess it's fine, right? Anyways, or every ability at that level has this mechanic going on. So no matter which one you pick, you're going to be picking not only the baseline power, but also only your subclass gets access to the special rider effects that are on these things. And I think that would be a really neat way to go about it. I think 5th edition in particular could really benefit from this kind of mechanic had it been incorporated into the baseline. And I think it's a shame that it wasn't. Because I don't know that they really understood the direction that they were going to be taking the game when they first wrote it. There's a certain emphasis on subclasses. Subclasses being like the main source of content for the game as they put out books. Because there aren't like a whole lot of feats. They've only added 1 class. Most of the player content that they've added has been subclasses. And so there's a certain mechanical focus on that. And I think if there were spells and abilities that really geared towards like what subclass you are, that would create a lot more like build a diversity and more variation in the gameplay experience. Because right now, as it is, every cleric that casts Spirit Guardians is getting the same package. Every cleric that casts Spirit Guardians is doing the exact same thing. Wouldn't it be cool if Spirit Guardians did something different based on what domain you were? I think it would be cool. So that is, baseline and variation in design. And I think that would be a really cool way in a level and class-based system to create, build diversity, new gameplay experience. Because you could play two different clerics and have a totally different time with the same spell. Same class, same spell, different experience if the subclass dictates like what the rider effect is on this iconic kind of spell. So anyways, I think that would be a good direction for 5th edition to have gone had they had the foresight to do so. I don't really blame them for not. I mean, who could have seen the state 5th edition would be in by now, right? I'm trying to think if there's any games that really do this extensively. And I can't think of any. But to be honest, I don't really spend a lot of time studying level and class-based games. Does Pathfinder do this? I don't think Pathfinder does it. I'm almost positive Pathfinder doesn't do this. I have recently picked up Worlds Without Number, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Maybe it doesn't in there. I don't know. Guess we'll find out. I would guess not, though. I don't think I've heard anything about it being like that. But it'd be an interesting mechanic to see in future games, perhaps. I think it has a lot of potential for the player experience.